This time last year, we thought we'd solved our striker problem. Went back a long, long time. Since when we sold Sebastian Haller. Bought him for 40 odd million, sold him for 20 odd million. Remember David Moyes was saying that the board had given him the money. They'd given him the balance. He had the money there, the funds to go out and buy a new striker, but it took him 18 months to do so. Chased a lot of strikers in that time. I'm not going to bore you with all the names, but when we got Gianluca Scamacca, we thought maybe he was the one. Turned out he wasn't. And both Scamacca and Michail Antonio both want to leave West Ham now. Both for two very, very different reasons, by the way. We'll get to that in just a bit. This is why I do believe it's imperative that West Ham bring in a director of football now. Because what we face now is exactly the same again. We face a situation where possibly, the most important purchase at the club this season will be the striker. It's the surprise one, really. It's the left of field one. I don't mean we need a left winger. I mean, it's this one that's come from a surprise angle. We know that replacing Declan Rice is an important thing. That we know. That was established. But I don't think anybody thought we'd have to go back into the market and replace, well, two strikers. Let's put it this way. Now, I don't want to get into Callum Marshall or Davide Mbama too much in this video at all. I think they're both really, really talented players. I mean, I really do. I'd like to see both given a chance. I think because physically Mbama is more physically developed than Marshall. We've seen a little bit more of him, but I also rate Marshall very highly as well. However, you can't expect to get rid of Scamacca and get rid of Antonio and then just promote those two. So we're sort of back to where we were, I think, really, which is we need to go out and we need to go and buy a striker. We need to go and spend 30 odd million pounds on a striker. We need to get it right this time, by the way. Of course, Scamacca cost 35 million, I think it was, from Sassuolo. We ain't getting that back. We just won't. That being said, I believe it's Roma, Inter Milan, and possibly Juventus might be interested in him. He's a good player. I'll tell you now. He will go back to Italy and he'll score goals. Don't worry about that. He'll play more for the Italian national team. He'll score goals for them too. It was just really under our manager that he didn't suit the way we play. But there's a lot of strikers who don't suit the way we play. Michail Antonio was right. He wasn't right to say it. He was right in what he said. He chose a really weird time to say it, 2-3 days before the Conference League final. Unfortunately, it didn't make any difference at all. And we won the thing. Great. But he was right in his observations. But Scamacca's not on his own in that, because Sebastian Haller didn't suit David Moyes' tactics and he scored goals. Chicharito, I say funny enough, not funny at all. Chicharito's still playing. He plays in the MLS, just got an injury actually. I was only funny enough thinking about him. He was in the news just today. He couldn't score goals under David Moyes. Didn't suit his system. Danny Ings has come in. Doesn't really suit David Moyes' system. So Scamacca's not on his own. You need a very, very special player that's going to fit within that system. And that's why it is important that we get a director of football that comes in. Because if we just suppose, for the purposes of this video, that David Moyes is staying at West Ham, and it is interesting because the news sort of does vary slightly each day. I think he probably will stay, but there's a temptation there for him to go to Celtic, and I can totally understand why he'd be tempted to go to Celtic, particularly if he's got a taste now of winning trophies. He's going to go to Celtic and he wins trophies. Simple as that, really, isn't it? However, if David Moyes does stay, then we know his style of football. Then actually it's for the director of football to say, okay, Mr. Moyes, this is the way you play. That's fine. Wouldn't expect the director of football to change the style in which the coach plays in. Not straight away anyway. For the next coach, you'd bring someone in, you try and change the culture of the club, get everybody from whatever, the under-8s to the senior team all playing the same way. Right. However, I would expect the director of football to say to David Moyes, right, this is what you want. This is what you want a striker. You want a striker that is quick, is strong, can play as well with his back to goal as he can running in behind the defence. He's going to need to be quick, he's going to need to be strong, and you want him to be able to operate and pull out wide. That's what you want. I understand your criteria, I understand what you need, I'm going to go and find you that player. Rather than getting somebody like Scamacca, who has wonderful ability to play with his back towards a goal, but doesn't have the pace to run in behind, and is, let's be fair, a little bit too clunky to operate out wide. Or someone like Danny Ings, who's a sniffer. He's a fox in the box, isn't he? That's what he is. He can't play with his back to goal. I mean, the complete opposite, really, of Scamacca. They can't play with his back to goal. But he needs a supply line. And he'll sniff out a number of opportunities, but you've got to supply the ball into the box. Not really what we do. And, I mean, he looked a little bit better towards the end of the season, Danny Ings. But if you were to tell me that Danny Ings would lead the line on his own for all the next season, I don't... Hey, I suspect that wouldn't end well. That's all I'm saying on that one. So I think getting a director of football in is a really good thing to do. I think that's probably sensible. And I think Moyes would have to swallow his pride on that one and relinquish authority. Not because... and that's nothing to do with winning a trophy or anything like that. You don't assess him on winning a trophy. You assess him on his ability to bring in a striker. And he ain't done too well at it. The two strikers that have done best for David Moyes, he hasn't brought in anyway. Bilic brought Arnautovic in. Did Bilic bring Antonio? I think he did. Was he in charge? He came from Nottingham Forest? I think he probably did. But they were both wingers we converted into forwards. In terms of David Moyes going out and purchasing a striker, it ain't been great, to be perfectly honest with you. And, you know, you can take it back to Jordan Hugill or to Boyan Jelavic. Maybe. Quite possibly. My point is, his record has not been great. So let's move that on to somebody else. But it does mean that we're going to have to find some funds from somewhere. And that is why David Sullivan came out pretty strongly and said, there's no way I'm loaning Scamacca, and nor should he. There's no way. I'm pretty sure a lot of the Italian clubs would like to do a little try before you buy thing. But they don't need to try before they buy. Syria knows all about Scamacca. Buy him. We all lose money. Probably find that actually someone buys him for 22, 23 million, something like that. We'll lose over 10 million on him. I'm quite sure of that. But we do need to get some money in. We can't take 30, 40 million pound out of Declan Rice money. So the Scamacca sale's going to have to fund that. Looking at Inter Milan, I do wonder if they're going to be a little bit more motivated now. I watched the final, and well, Edin Dzeko was definitely well. Look, if we think that Scamacca's not particularly mobile, Dzeko, understandably, because he's getting on a bit now. He's not the most mobile in the world, so I can understand Inter wanting to replace that. I don't know if Lukaku is still a Chelsea player, actually. Maybe he is, but whatever. I think maybe him missing the chances that he did miss as well. Maybe Inter might think to go that one step further and to be champions of Europe, they probably need to freshen things up front. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they thought that, having watched them play for 90 minutes the other night. I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. I understand why Scamacca might be leaving, though, and I really do. He's not had a fair crack at the whip. He's not had a fair chance. I say a fair crack at the whip. When I say a fair crack at the whip, he's not had the opportunity to really show off his skills because he's had to play up front on his own and isolated when he has played and he's been injured. We've never really seen him in a two. I think we saw it once. Got one little glimmer of it. I'm not talking about the last 10 minutes of a game when Antonio comes on because they're not suited as a partnership. I think it was one little bit. And it was in a European game, and I think he played Cornet and he played Scamacca up front, and I thought they looked good. Granted, wouldn't have been the best opposition in the world. But by and large, he's not been given a fair chance to display what he can do. Played with Raspadori up front in Syria, and for the Italian team, that's really what he needs to do. It needs to be the big guy and the little guy. Why we signed him, I've no idea. I don't know. It's pointless speculating. Maybe it was Moyes, maybe it was Rob Newman, maybe it's a combination of both. I do find it hard to believe that David Moyes has looked at that player and thought that's the one I want. I know he got injured, but Breuer was much more like it. All those things that I said David Moyes needs his striker to do, that was Breuer. Which is weird how he went for someone different, really. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter now. That water's under the bridge, isn't it? I understand him wanting to go back to Italy, go back. It's just not worked out. And if Moyes stays, it ain't going to work out. I mean, maybe, just maybe, if Moyes were to go and another manager came in, you might find it was very, very different. And, you see a very different player there because he's got more support. We play more of an attacking game. Counter-attacking team, forget it. Scamacca is not a man for a counter-attacking team. So I understand why he wants to leave. I can't really, for the life of me, understand why Antonio wants to leave. I mean, I've heard the rumours, and that's just... got to be careful what you say, really. Maybe he doesn't get on with everyone. Maybe that. And I don't know. What do I know about it? I don't know. We interviewed him on the channel years ago, Antonio. Seemed like a really, really lovely fella. So I've got nothing bad to say about Antonio at all. But he wants to leave. And he made no secret of that just before the transfer window. Spoke on the podcast with his mate Callum Wilson. Wolves were rumoured to be interested. And I think he possibly might have been allowed to go if Scamacca hadn't got that injury. But there you go. That's just what happened. The rest is history. I do find it weird, though, because I've mentioned it before. I'll say it again briefly. When David Moyes came in, he was a substitute winger under Pellegrini. I went back and looked, by the way. I wrote an article about it as well. And I went back and I had a little look at who exactly Pellegrini was using. And even just looking at his last few games, he was using Snodgrass out wide. He was using Fornells on the other side. Felipe Anderson, at the end of Pellegrini's reign, was playing in a number 10 role. But when he didn't, he would play on the left. And he was trying to, when Yarmolenko was fit, Yarmolenko would play as well. There wasn't really much room for Antonio within that squad at all. So that was Antonio's situation when David Moyes came in. David Moyes came in, turned him into a striker, became West Ham's record Premier League goal scorer, was playing more international football, got a lot of recognition. His profile was risen. Clearly, he's gone from a substitute winger who had been utilised. A lot of people say right back. He didn't play right back for very long, but by the very essence of the term, he was a utility player who would play in a number of positions. Hadn't really nailed down his position. It was David Moyes who gave him his position. Of course, ended up winning a trophy. I mean, I think I don't know. I don't know enough about Michail Antonio's former career. I know he came from a Tooting, didn't he? Was playing a bit of non-league football. I know he played for Nottingham Forest and he played for Reading. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of it, but I think there's probably cause to suggest, or reason to suggest, that David Moyes might have been the most influential manager in Michail Antonio's career. He took him and made him a trophy winner in that sense and made him a striker. So I can understand Scamacca being annoyed with David Moyes. Antonio less so. So I do find it a weird one that he wants out. I think he's got it pretty good at West Ham. There's not too many Premier League clubs that he would get a run at that. And I mean a run at it being the number one striker with very little competition for the majority of the past 2.5 years. And I say the majority, not all of the last 2.5 years, but for the majority of the last 2.5 years, he's had a clear run at it, Antonio. He's been the number one guy. Little bits and pieces here and there where he wasn't, but by and large, and I can't think of too many clubs where he's going to go to in the Premier League and not have it. He apparently doesn't like it. He doesn't like having a challenge. He likes being the number one guy. Where's he going to go? Where they're going to have no other strikers on the books apart from him, and where they're going to be contested. He's playing regular European football. I just think the whole landscape for Michail Antonio has totally changed. Maybe there's other things that we don't know about. I don't know at all. It doesn't really matter, really. He wants to go for his own reasons, and Scamacca wants to go for his own reasons. So it doesn't really matter if we understand why one of them wants to go and the other one leaves you scratching your head a little bit, thinking, hold on, why does he want to go? However, that's the way it is. And that means that we've got to go and this summer start scouting again. We don't want to be in this position. We don't need to be in this position where we're scouting again. Now, this should all be done. We should have our targets. And this is why all this stuff needs to happen. It needs to happen fast. Otherwise, people are going to go and pinch our targets. We need to know whether Moyes is going or staying. We need his director of football in. We need the money in for Declan Rice. There's so many component parts to this sort of stuttering engine that is West Ham's transfer strategy. We really need to get our asses into gear with it. Otherwise, we are going to find out that we miss out on these players. I don't know. I know this is not a striker. This is a winger. I don't know if Harvey Barnes is the one we definitely want. I'll tell you what. If he is, we need to go and get him, because the more we delay, the more we stutter, wait for the manager to confirm his future, wait for the Declan Rice money to come in, wait for the director of football. It's just someone else just comes in and pinches him. I know I said the same thing yesterday when I was talking about Yuri Tillemans, but hey, that's the situation we are in. So there you go. That's the news for today. West Ham will be on the lookout for a brand new striker.